Hi everyone, welcome to iAfrica Media, the biggest media platform for all things eye care on the African continent. Today I've got the awesome privilege of hanging out with my fellow Liverpool supporter, Davor. How are you, sir?
Can you?
Very well, very well. I got the privilege of meeting Davor for the first time a few years back at, I think it was the VisioMed conference.
I think so, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a VisioMed conference, and you just connected from that point onwards. You showed interest in the stuff that we were doing, and from there on I started coming to your practice. And one thing that for me has literally stood out the most for me is how world class the practice is.
Thank you.
The amazing leadership team that exists here, the diversity in the practice, the different departments, the different components, the different aspects where you guys focus on to ensure that every component of the business is excellent. So I figured that, you know what, I don't want to just be the only person that is aware of this. The rest of the continent needs to see, needs to hear, needs to learn about what makes the ideal optometric practice. And when I was thinking about who do we then talk to pertaining to that, your guys' practice came to mind. And so, Davor, I know who you are, but the people that are watching this, they don't know who you are, where you are working, how did you end up working in this particular practice. Yeah.
Okay, so I qualified, I think, end of 2001.
Okay.
And worked for practices around Johannesburg, Rosebank, Sandton, and Clearwater.
Okay.
And then December 2010, I had the opportunity to buy into this practice, which I did. So my first day was 1st of December 2010.
Wow.
And obviously joined, it was an established practice, but joined the team at that stage.
Wow. How many optometrists are in this practice, and how many employees are actually?
So we are 3 optometrists, 2 of which are the owners.
Okay.
We have 5 optical assistants. We have a financial controller, a lab technician, and we have a security guard at the door.
Wow. When I came in this morning, you guys were in the middle of training. In actual fact, every time I come to the practice, there's some form of training, communication that is taking place. And one thing that you have always alluded to is how critical that is towards the success of the practice. With such a mid-sized team with 3 optometrists, obviously you guys have different roles. The training, who is responsible for that?
So training mainly would come from myself and my partner. Sometimes we would outsource it.
Okay.
So we would ask our optometrist who works for us maybe to touch on a few things. But essentially the drive and the planning behind it comes from myself and my partner. We would also often ask a rep to come in, be it frames or contact lenses, or even eye drops, whatever might be happening. So we'd often get them to come in also sometimes and train the staff.
How often do you guys do training?
Officially once a week, every Wednesday morning.
Okay.
But also in between, if there's something to chat about any other morning, we'll have a quick little meet, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes. But officially a proper hour once a week.
Wow. And you not only outsourcing the training, but you also, other people, let me put it this way, other people see training as a once-off thing, not a continuous component of the business.
Very important to continue, because you might do a groundbreaking training today and impart some very crucial knowledge that you might think the team needs. But we're all creatures of habit. And when it's busy, you tend to slide back into old habits. Or you would ask the staff a month later, okay, we spoke about this, do you remember anything? And a lot of the times they won't. So the more you do it, the more it will become normal, and the more the staff remember it and it becomes habit.
Would you say with all this training that you're doing, how did you establish the buy-in of the team? Because I think that's also very difficult, that you could have your idea as the leadership team on what it's supposed to be happening and why you're doing the training. How did you get the buy-in of the team? Because I've seen the team. It's as if they want to do the training. They look forward to do the training. So how did you manage to overcome that hurdle that a lot of times practices struggle with?
So I think hiring the right staff is important, someone with the right attitude. But often you don't know until you've hired someone what happens. So you also have to just make sure that they fit into the culture. So when they come in, there would be training for a new staff member about how we do things, what we're about, what our philosophy is, and we will rely on the other staff to help them and to pull them with. Also, you want to keep things interesting. It's not just me speaking and they listening. You want to have it interacting. You might once in a while get coffees and muffins for the team. Keep it interesting. Often ask them what they want training on, not just you calling the shots. See, well, because you might not know what you may think they know something, but there's a lot of things that they're not sure of. So ask them what they would like training on. Try to keep things light. Also, it's not just a lecture. It should be interactive and have a bit of fun while you're doing it.
I like that. Well, I've picked up that you're not training the staff for the practice. You're training them to equip them as individuals, because it's as if after a while your team leaves, or the certain individuals will leave for better opportunities because their skills have been developed beyond the level of the practice.
Yes.
A lot of times people will be like, if I train my staff, I'm training them and then they end up leaving and I have to start the process all over again. But it's as if you are creating a certain level of standard for the practice, irrespective of whether someone has been here for 2 years, 4 years, or 2 months.
So that's very important. So yes, you could hire someone completely inexperienced and you have to train them and bring them up. Or you hire someone from another practice who is experienced, but you still have to get them into our mode of thinking. And unfortunately, it's the nature of the game, is people are going to leave. There is a certain ceiling an optical assistant will hit.
For sure.
And if they're motivated and have grown, they will move on to greener pastures. So actually part of your role should be to take this green person and train them, not just in selling skills or optometric skills, but a lot of what they learn will be life skills that they can move on, use in their personal life or in their next career opportunity. So that's just a normal flow. You will have someone that will leave, be that 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 years. And you shouldn't be scared of that. That actually should be your goal, is to leave someone more empowered when they leave here, that they're a better person and optical assistant than they were when they joined.
Wow. There's this phrase, it says that everything rises and falls on leadership. Here you mentioned that you've got the 3 optometrists, but the 2 business partners. And it's you and Janelia, which is male and female. And the dynamics that leadership play within an optometric environment, how important is that? How did you guys define the vision, the roles, the responsibilities, who's in charge of what? Like, how does the team respond to you guys? Do they see you guys as bosses, leaders? When are you the boss? When are you the manager? When are you the leader?
It's very difficult. So with optometry, a lot of people have gone into optometry because they want to be in a health profession. Then you end up into the big wide world, and it's a business and it's a retail component. So you need to learn both sides of the game. So it's tough to know when you have to be the boss and when you can be more friendly. So we like to see it as a family here. So we are friendly and open, and we know each other's personal lives, and we spend a lot of time together, which I think helps and is the right way to go. But you have to have that line where you can show authority. So it's something you've got to learn. It is difficult sometimes to just be one or the other. So it's a fine balancing act. But we, in this practice, definitely would like to see it as part of a family and more personal interaction. Also, everyone's different. So some people respond better to a stern hand or a stern, well, not a stern hand, a stern word, or maybe a disciplinary letter or something, whereas other people don't. Other people just need a chat, maybe just to vent something. So you almost have to learn, different people require almost different management.
Wow, I like that, because you're not applying that one size fits all type of approach, because there are certain types of situations or practices whereby they're having regular training, but they're not having the one-on-ones. So what you've just alluded to right now is that yes, there's that formal and informal training that takes place on a weekly basis, but in between, you prioritizing the one-on-one to establish or have a better understanding of the personalities, the individuals, the characters within the team, so that you can deal with them. Wow, that's
and that's something I've also just realized again recently, is we kind of stopped one-on-ones for a while. COVID, lockdown, short hours at some stages. So we forgot some of those one-on-one meetings were actually very crucial. So we've just actually picked up on again now and realized the importance of it. So yes, the weekly meeting important, and then I would say a 6 monthly one-on-one at the very least. So the staff know where they are with you and what the long-term plans are, how you feel with them. They might even tell you, look, I'm studying this degree, in 6 months I'm going to look for something else. You don't find those things out, the day they resign. So it's good to have those chats.
Wow.
And just going back to something you said earlier about the staff turnaround time, we're actually quite proud here to have staff that stay very long.
Wow.
So when there's a culture and there's a buy-in, you'll have more of that.
Wow.
You also don't want someone who's just now hit their ceiling and is just having it easy and just plateauing out and staying there for 10 years and getting a bit demotivated. So it is another factor of staff longevity. But getting that culture going and the regular training, the regular one-on-ones, if you're all on the same page, then that all helps.
You mentioned the impact of, not the impact, but you mentioned that certain things you had stopped them temporarily as a result of the pandemic. Speaking of the pandemic, how did it influence the way you do business? In the sense that, you guys are a big practice, very demanding practice, the type of patients that you're seeing, they come here expecting a certain level of service, a certain level of standard, and that was pre-COVID. It was high pace all the time. So now with the pandemic, was it a lot of things that you had to adjust, or because the service excellence
we had to learn as we went along. So we were closed for the first 5 weeks.
Okay.
Then we opened, obviously not knowing what's happening. We did have to unfortunately everybody in the practice was on shorter hours, which resulted in short pay. But luckily we had the tours, which helped us. And we had good rental discounts. So from the financial side, those two factors helped a lot. But then we also learned with the short staff complement how much we could actually still achieve. So let's say our staff hours reduced 50%. The turnover didn't drop 50%. So we learned to be more lean and more clever.
Wow.
So we tried our best to keep service going. We did online deliveries, online orders to our website and home deliveries for contact lenses. So that was one thing we helped in that period. People were too scared to come to us. But day to day, apart from just being a little bit more short staffed, we didn't stop anything else that we would normally have done. But we did learn to be a bit smarter. So we had some resignations in that period. And the biggest factor we learned is we didn't have to hire all those people again. So now we're just talking the business side.
Yes.
To cut expenses, we learned we could do a lot more with a bit less. So some people left, we didn't re-staff. But earlier end of last year, we did restaff 1 or 2 of the spots, but not all of them. And we're still fine. So that was the biggest lesson that we learned in not being overstaffed from a business sense. From a day-to-day point of view, like we said, we try to help with home deliveries and things like that. Otherwise, we try to do the normal as we normally would.
A lot of times when practices experiencing economic uncertainties, the stuff that they need the most about their business, whether it be marketing, digital, having a digital presence, doing that a little bit extra in terms of how they reach or connect with their patients. Like in your case, you were doing the deliveries.
Yes.
You sort of reinvested in a lot of things that you don't necessarily see the returns immediately. You start seeing the returns down the line. How important was that for you guys, where you were like, you know what, let's upgrade our social media, let's upgrade our marketing approach?
So we had more time, so we could look at things. Unfortunately, budget wasn't there, now talking about equipment or global things. But yeah, surely keeping your digital presence, looking at the website, sending out emails of communication, sending out SMSs with communication. It was probably a good time for promotions, so we sent SMSs out. So in tough times, you should carry on even more so with your digital side of things, and communicating with your clients, because everyone's unsure what's happening. Are you closed? Are your hours changed? Is it safe? What have you put in place? So we did also spread our appointments out, going back to the earlier question, and we let our patients know, well, this is the protocols we have in place, the appointments are spread out, everyone's masked up, we've got sanitizer everywhere, we've got shields on the equipment, just for that little peace of mind, so they knew what to expect before they come in.
Wow. One of the things, I keep going back to this training thing because I've seen the impact that it has. You seem to train your staff, not only the culture, the service excellence, but you mentioned equipment, you mentioned the technology that you are having in the practice, so that staff is fully aware of that type of technology, those type of equipment. Why is that important for you guys?
So I think any practice, you need to know what you're about. If you're going to be a pediatric practice or a heart lens specialist, or you're more on the retail side, or you're just clinical, whatever it is, or a budget practice that offers packages, etc.
Yes.
It's no right or wrong, as long as you know what you are. So you can't be everything to everybody. So obviously, if you're a pediatric practice, you'll still service other people. If that's your main aim, then obviously that should be your main focus. When new staff come in, you've got to train them on that. So for us, a big deal with us is our diagnostic equipment. So if the staff aren't trained how to use it and why it's there, and they don't understand where it fits in,
sure,
the impact is lost. I mean, the public's not going to really know what's behind the doors. But if the staff buy into that and understand why our technology-inspired atmosphere is important to us, it fits in with that story that we're talking about. So what are we about? And one of the important things we're about here at this practice is our high level of technology.
Wow.
So it's important to train the staff so we're all on the same page there.
And I'm assuming that, or I could only believe that you having the necessary diagnostic tools, diagnostic equipment, expands or broadens your clinical capacity as a practice. Considering that there's 3 of you, yes, it means that helps you then have that unique value proposition within the community that you are serving, that you stand out as a result of.
Yes, so that's one of our differentiators. So we are more in the retail space with more branded eyewear. Obviously we can offer a lot of things to a lot of people.
For sure.
We can't do everything to everybody.
For sure.
And added to that is the technology. So we want a technology-inspired atmosphere. That's one of our beliefs. So that equipment obviously helps with that, and it helps with the clinical side. So again, any practice you might say whatever segment you want to be in, everything still rests on having good optometry. So you need to have good optometry, good clinical skills, and the equipment helps with that. I mean, an OCT, for instance, is fantastic. Fundus cameras, topographers, etc., all helps with your clinical side, and with that technology-driven atmosphere, which is part of our philosophy.
Wow, there's a young optometrist who's probably going to be watching this and thinking, I have to make the decision that one day I want to have my own practice. But is it easier now to have a practice, whether it be independent or franchise, compared to 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when you started having those thoughts that, you know what, it's time for me to get into the practice? How long had you been practicing before you decided I actually want to own a practice? And you mentioned that you worked in like 3 or 4 different types of working environments before you made that decision. For that young optometrist who's trying to figure out where to from here, we are living in a pandemic-driven economic environment. Do I go the safe route, and I put that in inverted commas, in terms of working for someone, or going into the franchise route, or do I go independent and start it on my own, or do I work for someone who isn't independent?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to look at it. Firstly, I think anything in life, you should have a plan, maybe a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year plan, so you can work towards that. Because it's very easy to get into somewhere because it's the only place available, and you're soon floating along without a vision. So if you can start with a 5-year plan, where and how you start, it's up to debate, but I would first start working in a practice to get experience, because what you learn at varsity and what you learn in practice is different. You have to learn the day-to-day things. A lot of people then start at a practice where they're the only person first off out of university.
Sure.
I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend to work with other practitioners if you could, just to gain experience and to learn. So that would be my first advice, is maybe work somewhere in a busier practice where you can learn and maybe there's a lab on site.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those technical issues we only find out later on. So that would be the first port of call. Then, to start your own practice, I think that's the ideal. If you really love optometry and you want to make success of it financially, then if you can have your own practice, that's the way to go. Where and how it's tricky now with COVID, starting a practice can be pricey. But that's, everyone's in a different position financially. So I think that should be the go-to at the end of the day, to have your own practice. Whether you can start small and buy shares into a practice and build yourself up, that might be a better option.
So why just
the finances are very crucial. To open a practice or to buy over an existing successful practice, the banks will often look for security, and they don't just give loans out easily. So you've got to start that planning earlier. And that's where I would have done things differently. Is I was in practice for about 10 years before I bought in. But the planning for that I could have started earlier, to realize the financial implications. Who do you speak to? What do you need? How much does it even cost? And all those things were a bit new to me when I started looking. So I think start that early on, find out what it costs, who are the best banks to speak to, do you need security, don't you need security?
So that plan, it shouldn't be something that you just decide without proper planning.
Correct.
On what is best for you, the route, the type of optometry practice that you want to have.
Yes, and then you've got to decide for yourself, well, do you love pediatrics? Then you should obviously look at that and then see, well, what are the best pediatric practices? What equipment do I need? If I want to fit hard lenses or be a hard lens fitted, I need to buy certain equipment. Do I want to just be a high-end market retail practices in a high-end shopping centre? There's many ways to do it. So you've got to try and see what calls you and work on that.
Wow, I see a lot of certificates here. The furthering of your education, how has that shaped your optometric journey?
Yeah, very, very crucial. So you've all got the usual CPD stuff that you should do monthly. We're often a bit lazy, and in December time we cram 20 articles in a day. But going to conferences now in COVID, that's been limited. So there's a lot of online. So there's a lot of content at the moment. So there's no excuse not to learn at the moment. So another thing, talking about the quiet time, besides with the staff, the optometrists also then had a chance to do online training and things. But to attend conferences is very important. I was lucky to do this diagnostics course 10 years into, about 10 years into my career. And it just reinforced everything I'd learned at varsity, but had almost forgotten a little bit. Because day to day, you very soon end up seeing someone for half an hour and you do the same routine, and it's all about the prescription and the spectacles. But you forget about the other stuff. So if you don't keep that going, you will forget and lose a bit of your clinical edge. So to do proper good courses and conferences, it actually keeps you more motivated. Every time I've had a conference, I've come back to practice with fresh eyes, looking at the same thing again but with new eyes, or just opening up the old eyes that you had in the beginning. And it really gives you a motivation and another clinical edge. And there's always something new.
True.
That you might think, I've been to a dry eye talk 28 times. There's always something new that you come back, or even something that you've already learned that you've just kind of forgotten or gone back to the old habits. So yes, continuous training and conference is very important.
I like that, because that just keeps on, at the end of the day, you got into optometry to become an optometrist. At the end of the day, you want to give yourself every opportunity that's available to broaden that scope, to broaden that capacity.
Correct. And there's a lot of new things all the time that you might not be aware of. Myopia control.
Absolutely.
It's now a new big one. Scleral lenses, dry eye management, these are all current things that are developing at quite a pace. So if you're not if you just rely on what you remember from 10, 20 years ago from varsity, you're going to miss out.
Wow. Davor, this has really been fantastic, because you highlighted so many pearls of wisdom that I believe that the people that are watching would be able to take from this, the aspect of the clinical side of optometry, in terms of having a clear plan, in terms of what one really wants to do or achieve within optometry, and be focused on that. You highlighted aspects of training and how pivotal or critical they are towards the successful running of an optometric practice. You highlighted aspects of the leadership, in terms of what is it that you want, what is it that you want to be building, How do you guys resolve conflict or disagreements as the leadership team? Or you guys don't have because look, you guys are two different personalities from what I've gathered.
Yes, going back to your earlier question about the dynamic. So we're lucky we are quite different. So we have different skill sets, myself and my partner, which complements the overall leadership dynamic. So we'll have a meeting once a week, or whenever. I mean, we've got email, WhatsApp, we see each other often. So for the staff, it could be quite interesting because we might answer or act differently in different situations. But I think it's important to always have the same front. So whatever might be different in the background, you should come to the same conclusion and present the same thing. Otherwise,
that's very important.
It's like naughty children, they know which parent to go to. So that's important. And us having our own meetings and our own strategy on the business side, so we keep the boat going in the same direction, is important. Then going back to your question, so everyone's different. So we've had certain team members that just clashed at certain times. So your team will vary from time to time. Our basic philosophy is try to sort it out between yourselves quickly. Don't let it fester and build up so that 3 weeks later there's a big explosion. If you can't sort it out between yourselves quickly, come to myself or Janilla, my partner, and discuss it with us, and we might have a meeting with the two members together. But if they can sort it out together, fine. If they can't, then that needs to be sorted out quite quickly by management, because it will blow up somewhere. And the only people that are going to suffer is the clients, because they're going to walk in, pick up the vibe.
Absolutely.
The service is going to drop. There's going to be a shouting match in front of the public. So that ticking time bomb, the sooner it gets sorted out, whether it's between the two staff members or with management, the sooner the better.
And that speaks into the culture, the working environment. Those are key elements that are influenced by all the small little things.
Correct.
So what you're saying in terms of making sure that whatever that is happening between people, because we're all different, we all come from different backgrounds, we all come from, some are using taxis to come to work, some are using cars, some are having living home situations that are very depressing.
Very different.
Others are completely having the time of their lives, and when you get to work, it's so vital that we make sure that everyone, with regards to what's required of the practice of the business environment.
So your business principles and your vision, your staff culture should never be compromised, and the basic rules. But as you said, there's different people with different circumstances. So you might have to, as long as you've communicated with everybody, maybe let someone start a teeny bit later, because they are waking up at 5 and catching 2 taxis, as opposed to someone who lives 5 minutes from work. But your starting time is your starting time. There mustn't be any ambivalence on that, as an example. But so to have a nuanced approach to every individual is important. But once you're at work and the doors are opened, the same standard should apply to everybody.
Wow.
And if there are problems, personal problems, yes, we'll bring the person in, have a chat, see what's happening, so that when they are at the interface with the patients and the clients, that it's standards aren't dropped.
Thank you very much. This was very highly informative. Everyone, especially the young people who are watching this, if you're looking at what is the ideal optometric practice, something that's going to give you a broader perspective in terms of your optometric journey, your business journey, reach out to Davor. I believe that you've got so much wisdom that you're sharing, what you guys have done in this particular practice. A lot of people, young and old in actual fact, can learn from that. So thank you. We wish you guys success as iAfrica Media over the next couple of years, that you guys can continue doing the wonderful work that you guys are doing, because I see the patients that they come to the practice, how they feel when they're here, and when they leave, you see that wow, they are happy and they're satisfied with the kind of service that you have given them. And we could have went into a whole discussion on service excellence on its own, but we will discuss that on another time as a follow-up to this particular interview. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Good luck to everyone out there. It is challenging times, but just stick to your principles, and yeah, you can do it.
Absolutely.
And thanks to you for your enthusiasm in the industry. And thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
It's only a pleasure. Everyone, make sure to connect with Africa Media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our website for amazing content from amazing leaders such as Davor and many others throughout the continent of Africa. And follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course Instagram. We look forward to connecting with you. Take care, everyone.